Hi, welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Laurel. I'm Laurel, and in this video we're going to take a look at decimals for healthcare professionals. Previously, I have produced some videos on decimals, specifically on knowing the place value and how to round a decimal number, how to do the operations with decimal numbers, adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing, and also how to change a fraction to a decimal and a decimal to a fraction. In the college where I taught, students in some of the healthcare programs were not allowed to use calculators when they were doing their math exams. So if you're rusty at all in doing any of the operations or in rounding and changing fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions, I recommend that you take a look at those videos first. In this video, what I want to focus on is knowing what operation to use. When you're presented with a problem involving decimals, where it's not clearly stated what operation, you will have to determine that operation. So let's take a look at some of those examples. Our first example says a patient is to receive medication as follows: 1.25 milligrams on day 1, 0.75 milligrams on day 2, 0.5 milligrams on day 3, and 0.25 milligrams on day 4. The question says if the original supply for this patient is 3.5 milligrams, how much is left? If we were working with whole numbers, we would probably not hesitate on how we would set this up. But basically, we want to know how much has been given in those 4 days. And to do that, we're going to add these individual amounts up. Then once we've got that total, we're going to subtract from the total that we started with. So it's an addition and a subtraction question. When we're adding decimal numbers, just make sure that your decimal point lines up with all of the numbers. When there is no digit in a particular spot, the digit is a 0. So we're going to start, just like with regular addition, we start on the right. So 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 15. Carry the 1. So we put the 5 and carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 7 is 10. 15, 17, so we write 7 and carry the 1. Now we have to put our decimal point there. We carry it down into our answer, and then 1 plus 1 is 2. So far the patient has received 2.75 milligrams. The question asks, if the original supply was 3.5 milligrams, how much is left? So in this case, we're going to subtract. So we have 3.5 milligrams minus 2.75, and we need to put a 0 here because we're going to be subtracting from that digit, so we need that 0 placeholder. And again, when you're subtracting, make sure your numbers line up with the decimal point in the same place, and then we subtract like we do with regular numbers. We subtract 5 from 0, we can't, so we have to borrow from the 5, that becomes a 4, this becomes a 10, so 10 minus 5 is 5. 4 minus 7, we can't do that, so we need to borrow from the 3. When we borrow 1 from the 3, it becomes a 2. And when we borrow a 1, it becomes 10 tenths, which we add to the 4 becomes 14. So 14 minus 7 is 7. We put our decimal point there. 2 minus 2 is 0. So the amount we have left is 0.75 milligrams. Let's try some more. Our next example says a tablet contains 0.2 milligrams of a certain medication. How much medication is contained in 4.5 tablets? It might be helpful to think of this in terms of whole numbers. If that had been a 2 instead of 0.2, and if this had been, let's say, 45 instead of 4.5, if you knew you had 2 milligrams of medication in each tablet and you had 45 tablets, you would probably know that you should multiply 45 times 2 to get the total amount of medication. We do exactly the same thing with this question. It's just that we're working with decimals. So we're going to multiply 4.5 tablets times 0.2. Now, in order to do the multiplication, I'm going to ignore the decimal point initially, and I'm going to put it in after I've done my product. So I multiply like I normally do, starting on the right. 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. Then I'm going to place my decimal point. When you're multiplying, you add up the number of digits past your decimal point. That total is the number of digits that should be past the decimal point in your result. So I have 1 digit here, 1 here, a total of 2. So my answer should have a total of 2 digits past the decimal point. So my answer would be 0.90. So I would have 0.9 milligrams in 4.5 tablets. Let's try some more. Okay, the next example says a treatment requires 0.5 milligrams of medication to be administered to a patient every hour. If 10 milligrams is available, how long will it last? If this had been a whole number, if this had been 5 milligrams, we would probably clearly see that we would have to take our total amount of medication and divide by the amount of medication per dose. So we would do division. We're going to do the same thing, although we're going to be doing division with decimals. So we're going to be taking 10 milligrams and dividing by 0.5 milligrams. When we divide with decimals, this is called the divisor, and we cannot keep our decimal point in our divisor. We need to move it. So in order to get rid of my decimal point, I need to move it one place. If I move my decimal point in my divisor by 1, I have to move my decimal point in my dividend as well. So my decimal point is there. So when I move it over 1, I have to put a 0 as a placeholder. So if you want to clean this up and just write this as 5 dividing into 100, or 100 divided by 5. Now we do the division. 5 goes into 1. No, it doesn't. So we take the next digit. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. When we subtract, we get a 0. But we still have a 0 placeholder here, so we need to put a 0 placeholder here. So 5 goes into 100 20 times. So the medication will last 20 hours. In our last example, it says an infant is to be given 4.5 milligrams of medication for each kilogram that she weighs. If the baby weighs 3.4 kilograms, how much medication should you administer? Hopefully you can see that we're going to need to do multiplication in order to solve this. Again, think of if it was in whole numbers. If the baby needed 10 milligrams for each kilogram and the baby had a mass of 4 kilograms, you would be able to see 10 times 4 would be 40. Same idea, it's just decimal numbers. So we're going to take the baby's weight, which is 3.4 kilograms, and we're going to multiply by 4.5. So when we multiply our decimals, we're just going to multiply as we normally do, and then we'll determine where our decimal point goes at the end. So 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2. 3 times 5 is 15, plus our 2 is 17. Then we go to the next digit, we put a 0 placeholder. 4 times 4 is 16, carry the 1. 4 times 3 is 12, plus that 1 is 13. Now we add, carry the 1. Now we have a total of 2 digits past our decimal points in our numbers that we're multiplying. So in our answer, we should have 2 digits past our decimal point. So our total would be 15.3 milligrams. Practice working with decimals, practice working with questions like this so you know what operation to choose. My next video is going to be percents for healthcare professionals, so when you're ready, I'll see you then.